I'm Mark.
And this is The Need to Know. Welcome back to the panel, guys. So, this episode is super different. We've never done this before. We are having an extra host. I'm pretty sure you guys know who this person is. She done been on the show. She done been in the background. She done been named in the show plenty of times. I'm super excited. It's gonna be super fun. This episode, just so you guys know, it is called Young Minds in Politics. We have a great panel. I'm super excited. And the person who will be hosting the show is Gabby. Again, just so you guys know, one of us won't be on the show. And it's not me. So I won't be on the show. My wonderful partner here will be hosting the show with Gabby. And I just hope you guys are prepared because this is exactly how we want the panel to go for the rest of the season. Definitely, you know, if you're interested, hit us up because we are always looking for guests. Like I said, this is super not in our topic group. Like, you know, we're super jumping out of the bubble here and we're doing politics. We are going to keep it as modern as we can and like as super simplified as we can get it so that it's not too overwhelming or emotional or...
Well, I mean, we want the base,
yeah,
we don't want it to get like...
super all over the place. Yeah, no. Again, just so you know, I will be behind the scenes like I was last time and I will be, you know, talking. I will be saying my little 2 cents, but hopefully not as much this time. I'm excited. Are you guys ready? No?
I am, but I'm...
Well, we gotta get into the show. Ready?
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the Need to Know. My name is Gabby and I will be co-hosting today with the lovely Shamar.
Alright, so today, guys, as y'all know, it's a little different. This is our very first panel on the show. Well, no, second. Today we're going to be talking about politics, specifically young minds in politics. So we have a panel full of, you know, different guests. We have some literally within the political system. We have some rappers, and we just have a bunch of different people. But pretty much we're going to flow into different types of topics. So without further ado, who wants to start?
Yes, we can start with Brian.
Hey y'all, my name is Brian. I go to Farmingdale State College, currently studying business management. I have no role in politics whatsoever, but you know, I'm opinionated, so here we are.
But you do. You're opinionated, and that is your role. Yeah, there you go.
It's not the same.
Hey everyone, I'm Felicia. I'm a teacher and I'm a candidate running for New York City Council in Queens, District 32.
My name is Josh. I am a student at Baruch, an MPA student, and I work in the nonprofit sector.
Local Warbucks, Queens, New York, left, right, city. I'm a rapper. I don't think I hold a role in politics, but I'm definitely voting in November, so I mean, catch me at the ballot, baby.
Yes. That is what it's all about. Make sure not only you are voting, but your friends are voting. Yes. So we're gonna get into it. The first question: what is everybody's thoughts on politics right now? I know politics is at the forefront of the world, other than the pandemic. So what is everybody thinking?
It's a bad time.
What do you mean?
I don't even want to be involved. Like that's why I'm side. Like this is just it's trash. It's bad. It's not like, you know, good and bad. It's just which one's not as bad. So it's kind of like, yeah, I'll flow around. I'll come back around next year. I'm a voter.
Okay. I feel like we're always in this place of like just having these mediocre people who run for these federal positions, and it's just like we're always settling. We're always compromising as people, especially people of color. We're always compromising and being like, okay, well, I guess this is the best we have, and so we have to vote. So I understand that for sure.
I think this is one of the weirdest phases, but also one of the greatest phases in a sense. Just because we don't know who the current president is. I'm not gonna mention his name. But Obama, still president. But I think this is one of the times where the pandemic, Black Lives Matter, everything just kind of worked in our favor to the point where I think this is gonna be the first time where like a lot of young people actually vote for the first time. Prior to, I wasn't old enough to vote for Obama at the time, but I know like people who were of age at that time who just like didn't want to vote just because like it wasn't broadcast as much. But now because of, you know, Trump being Trump and like just Black Lives Matter and the movement being so loud, I think, you know, this voting year is going to be like really big for something.
Yeah, I definitely think we're in a moment right now in politics. What the moment exactly is, I think we won't know, you know, for years until we're looking back on, you know, this time now and everything that's happened with the pandemic and this crazy presidency that we've been dealing with, hopefully for, you know, not too much longer. But I do think you're right in that there's a lot going on and there's a lot more people paying attention, and we could only hope that that leads to more people getting engaged and, you know, taking a position on something or picking a side, and, you know.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a weird time. Like, I'm only 22, and I remember being like 6, 7, 8, watching all like the Wolf Blitz inside the newsroom, AC 360, and stuff, like all these different shows. And it was just a different energy, you know. Any type of slander would be through the commercials, through the ads, and there's talking bad on the podium. But it's not just Trump running to Twitter to talk to his, you know, crazy stuff, but it's all of his, the people in the Senate and the House all doing the same thing. While about him doing the social media thing, going out just talking crazy to people who have, like, what's her name? I don't know, some black lady going out at Cardi B for whatever reason. You know, there's so much. Yeah, Kansas, thank you. You know what I'm saying? There's so much crazy stuff that's going on that I've never seen before. You know, like this. It's like, whoa, like, can we get back to, you know, focusing on what really matters, what's going on, the people in front of us, and not all these other shenanigans. So it's definitely, it's humorous in a sense. That's why people say, like, people are laughing at America because of all that's going on. Like, yeah, it starts up here, but it's trickling down and showing everywhere else. So
I'm kind of have to disagree with, I think what Shimon said it, is actually going to turn a lot of people out to vote. I actually think it's the opposite, because people are kind of hopeless at this point because of, like, as Felicia was saying, people are like kind of just stuck. They're like, okay, like Trump is gonna win anyway. Like, we're better off with Trump. What do you guys feel about that?
Who said that?
No, you gotta read Twitter. Twitter. You going crazy.
Oh my gosh.
I disagree, but on one point, I feel like, I'm not saying he's a better president than Biden, but I feel like on the investment side, because I am a personal investor, like I invest in a lot of companies, so I do feel like in terms of Trump, that's where he benefits, because we all know like Trump is really like a money grabber. Like he focuses a lot on money rather than, you know, the safety of America. So I would agree that in terms of like the investment side, Trump is a better candidate, but to me, it's like, as great as money is, it's not the most important thing in the world, which is why I feel, even though Biden is he's not the greatest candidate, but it's like, he is better than Trump, so, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's something to this idea that people who support Donald Trump are really enthusiastic about supporting Donald Trump, while people who support Biden are just like, the thing that they're most enthusiastic about is getting Donald Trump out.
Right.
It really doesn't have a lot to do with Biden. So I don't know what that means, you know, in the election. It's like, what side is stronger? And, you know, I think being an incumbent plus having a really dependable base is a recipe for you to be a contender, a strong contender. But I do hope, and I do think that there's been a lot of craziness that's happened, and there's been a lot of like mishandling of, you know, something like a pandemic that's supposed to be not political at all, and he made it into the most political thing we've ever seen in our life. Like, and it's insane because what's the death toll now? Like 180,000 people or something? It's probably higher now. And, you know, the fact that that's just like another political football, I don't really think people are into that. I think a lot of people have lost people, and I'm hoping that means people will show up and vote based on the need for real leadership in the times of a crisis, if nothing else. But yeah, we don't know what's gonna happen. I will say this, and sorry if I'm a little long-winded. I look at Donald Trump, and I like watch a little bit of Fox News, even though it's not my political views at all. I don't want to be blindsided like I was in 2016 when, he actually won. So I try to pay attention to what he's doing and what he's saying. And I wish that there was someone, like if Barack Obama fought for the issues that he was on the right side of history on, with like the enthusiasm that Trump fights for dumb shit like the wall, and I don't know, whatever his issue of the day is, what would that look like? What would it look like to have someone energetically fighting for higher wages for people, for labor protections, for healthcare? So there's definitely a lot to learn from Donald Trump and his style and his brashness and his truth-telling, or his version of truth-telling anyway, that, I think we should all be paying attention to.
I totally agree with you. It's so interesting because I think we have Trump in a way to thank for waking us up. Like, he really woke us up in this way that was really disruptive. Like, it shook us. It was like, how could it possibly be with his track record to win an election like he did and wake up the next day? Like, as a teacher, I had to wake up the next day and look my students in the face and say, I literally don't know what's going to happen. It was sad. It was one of the most depressing days in a school building. You had kids crying all over the place. You had social workers on call. You had teachers crying, and it's like, how do you comfort people for the unknown? And then you had the Women's March that happened immediately after. You have protests that's happening right now. And it's like, people realize that we're in this place of desperation. So if we're gonna vote Trump out, we have to desperately want it. That's the only choice.
Like, I feel like what you guys are saying is very important, and so many people don't realize that, which is why, the previous comment, like, enough people don't want it. And then someone actually, back to Twitter, someone actually posted on Twitter, like, all these celebrities are rallying behind Biden, but honestly, they'll go back and vote for Trump. Because, like Shamar was saying, that actually opened my eyes, that's what business is.
I'm sorry.
It's okay,
The Democrats are a very pro-business party too.
Right, they
okay?
are.
They're very much Wall Street interests, big. Right. It's so, it is true that under Republicans, they are more open with it. They want to cut taxes for business. They want to do a lot. They're definitely, I would say, more pro-corporate, but it's like pro-corporate and more pro-corporate. Mm-hmm. It's not a situation where, I don't think Biden or any of these establishment Democrats are coming for anyone's pockets, so. But it is true, the deregulation, the open cheerleading for business and economic interests over everything else. It's clear what side of the issue he's on, so.
And speaking of that, you guys talked about voting and people not voting. What are your voting plans for the upcoming election? How do you guys plan to vote, whether it be in person, early voting school?
I'll be in person. Right to the school down the street.
On election day.
Yeah,
Is what you're saying? Okay, cool.
Go right down to the school. My little, 2 numbers, sign up, go to the poll, get out right early in the morning, go to work, on my day. That's it.
That's great. You know exactly what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Bring your friends too. Bring your friends or your family members.
Yeah, sometimes me and my brother go together in the morning.
That's awesome,
And
yeah.
I'll wake them up and we'll see what happens.
I try to go with my parents just because my dad, he speaks English as a second language. And usually when he goes to the polls by himself, they say, oh, your name's not here. He doesn't understand. Like, what do you mean? I always vote here. And they'll give him an affidavit, which is like, if your name's not there, you can fill out this form. It's still you voting. But it's like, someone needs to help him fill out the form or just make sure he's signing in the right place, because then your vote is like, I don't want anyone to take advantage essentially of this person and lose that vote. So I always adamantly go with my parents no matter what, or I'll go with one and then go with the other one later. So just to make sure. But I want to do early voting this time. I think I went on election day for primaries, but I want to do early voting just because it's like less crowded. The long lines make people super anxious, and I feel like with early voting, they are like working out the kinks. And so that's what I want to do this time.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to whoever building I gotta go to. Because actually coming my first time voting. Because I could have voted for Trump in that election. But I said, I'm like, he's not gonna win this thing. I don't gotta wake up and do that. So obviously you can imagine my reaction when he
Right.
won. I was like, oh, why should I do this?
Yes. I was like, oh, you were one of those.
Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. So that was definitely a wake up call.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I was like, you know what, for, because I definitely could have voted also to what does AOC run for? With that
Congress.
Congress and all that stuff, but I just never ran to it. It never real
Right.
call to action for me. I was like, this time let this election be what makes me get up, every quarter and every, whatever
Yeah.
to do and go about it. So I said, I'm gonna let this one be the one. So I'm gonna go in person.
Do y'all vote before the big election?
Like for like the primary?
Like everybody else before, yes.
Oh yeah.
I feel like
Local
the main thing
elections.
that people are missing is that, everybody's ready to vote for the one big election, but they're not
Yes.
recognizing that you gotta get your teachers, you gotta get your teachers in play before
That's
you
right.
get to an election, or else it's not gonna matter.
Yeah.
Once that electoral college looks at your stuff, they're like, fuck, I'm still voting for Trump. Like, it doesn't matter.
Right. Oh
You
my
don't got your
gosh.
own people in place to make the vote for you. So.
Right.
I'm so
Yeah.
excited you hit on that. Because, no, local elections, I mean, I'm running for a local level position, so okay, sure, I'm biased. But at the end of the day, it's so important to realize that local elections impact the federal election. These are the people who support local level legislation that impact your everyday, whether or not you get a stop sign on your block, whether or not you get your garbage picked up, whether or not you have health care. All those people make those decisions. So yeah, the president is such an important election to vote for. You should absolutely do it, but also vote for your local electeds because they're the ones who impact your direct life every single day.
And they're the ones where if you call or write them a letter, they might actually see it and be able to respond
Right.
versus,
Right.
the White House. So,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely plan on going in person too. I just feel like I requested an absentee ballot for the primary, and it never came.
What?
And I requested it basically as soon as the shutdowns were getting real. I was like, okay, let me just do this, and it just never came. So I feel like now I don't trust the mail, and this happened long before it was in the mail that the post office was being messed with and all that.
Same.
So when I saw that on the news, I'm like, exactly, that's what
Yeah.
right.
No,
So
it's so
yeah,
true.
I'm gonna just hazmat suit up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to get there early, so it's not a long. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
wait.
when you go in the morning, it's just like everybody comes after work. That's when
Right.
like the lines really.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Exactly.
Nobody's there.
Right. Just get it done. So
But I think they have early voting. Like, I don't know where all you guys are from. They have early voting starting October 24th, right?
Yes, October 24th to November 1st.
Yes. So if y'all don't bypass all the lines, make sure
Yeah.
you get there.
And they do early voting on Saturday and Sunday, so you don't have to do it during the week.
I just learned something. I'm gonna do that.
Yes. Speaking of that, so what do you guys say to people that y'all know that don't want to vote? Like, how do you guys encourage your peers, your
Don't go
family?
outside. What are you doing? We know how to vote. Like, what? Do you not see what's going on?
Right.
There's no conversation. Do it. Like, that's just it.
So like, if they're adamant, because like I know people that are adamant.
There's no way. Come on. You know that? No.
I
We're not friends. Like, that's just the worst.
yeah.
How? I don't know anybody. I personally don't know anybody like that. But if I did, and I really can't get across to them, it's just one of those like, I gotta fall back now. I can't
He's
respect
serious.
them.
Yeah, I mean that's really you have a high moral ground.
Yeah, because I feel like that's just basic. Like, come
Right.
on, you really can't go outside real quick. You're not doing anything else.
What are other ways to spread awareness other than voting?
Other ways to spread awareness,
Other than voting?
posting it on your story.
Communication.
When you go and vote, they give you a little sticker. Everybody posts their sticker, and they're like, "Oh snap! It is debatable." Now you go, now somebody else go out and vote. So yeah, definitely social media, texting, reminders beforehand. Watch the craziness is already outside. Yeah, definitely.
I think something that I do to Gabby's point, just because I've done it in the past. Like I said, I just put my first time voting, so I've never been adamant about not voting. I've never I'm against it, not none of that. I just never ran to it. What I do sometimes, the homies, whatever, they'll be like, we're not really feeling time around. I used to be really close with, before we passed, Jose Peralta. So he would always announce when he was coming to my church or anyone else come to the church. So I'd be like, hey, you know what? We all really accepted this anyway. Let's all go to the church, hear what they got to say, see what's going on, and to open up a lot of their minds and their hearts and just see what's going on, hear what's going on. And some of them actually went ahead before I even did and went to the poll, just off me, taking them to church. So I was like, wow, So now sitting here, I'm like, why didn't I go? It's just stuff like that is just cool, that you can even do and just see these people speak. To see them worshiping with you and all of that, it's just a beautiful thing. So that's something that I've done. Anything else you can do, I don't know. I'm not ready to just unfriend nobody. It's just
there's like not voting, but then being against voting. It's like, come on. Like if there's any time to vote, now is really like has to be a crucial time.
Right.
Everybody hop in the car.
Right.
Take a road trip. Let's go.
Agreed.
To the polls.
I mean, I definitely vote every time just because, whatever, I do it. But I do it because I feel like, black people had to fight so hard to get the right to vote. And, people was getting their ass beat on that bridge in the South over it. It's kind of like you owe it to the ancestors thing for me. But personally speaking, when you talked about the representative coming to your church and that sparking people to vote, I think it really is kind of the job of the people running to get people out of their house and feel like they have something to vote for. Because, voting reflexively there's a lot of people that do that, and there's a lot of Republicans that do that in some states where they're voting completely against their interests, but they grew up voting a certain kind of way, and that's how they vote. And is that better or worse for the political system? I don't know. I don't have a position on that. I just think that there's many different, things that will bring people to the polls. But if you, as someone who's running for office, can give people a positive reason to go to the polls, then, I do think you kind of owe it as your civic duty to try to cast your vote. But especially when it comes to like federal elections, presidential elections, what has the last president done, any of them, that really directly impacted or changed my life, And it's hard to answer that question. I'm sure we could search for things. Yes.
I just have an answer.
Right, okay, I want to hear it.
Okay, so when we know that also 2020 is about the census, right? It happens every 10 years, part of the United States Constitution. It gives us federal dollars. Those federal dollars go directly towards fixing our roads and our highways. They go directly towards lunch programs, special ed grants, pre-K, Medicare. When Trump knew the census was coming, he decided to scare everybody and was like, I'm gonna put a citizenship question on the census. Are you a citizen of the United States? The census is not about counting every citizen that lives in the United States. It's about counting every person that lives in the United States. What did that do? It caused fear. Then he tried to roll back census again by making sure that the self-response rate was rolled back a month. So instead of October 31st, you had until October 31st to fill out your census. You have until September 30th. If your district, if your neighborhood is undercounted, that's less federal dollars for you. And in fact, it costs your district $3,000 more per person than it did if you got those federal dollars. So that's the direct impact. He's taking money, he's keeping money from us because we don't want to fill out a form because we're fearful of filling out a form. We don't trust the government, we don't trust that it's going to be used in the right way. The data can't legally, based on the Constitution, even be used to find out what your address is. But at the end of the day, it causes fear in people, especially our undocumented community, who pay high taxes, are essential workers, are out on the streets since COVID started, because they can't take off, are not on unemployment, they don't have federal relief. And so at the end of the day, knowing this and manipulating people's money that they deserve and they have the right to, that's his impact. Yeah. It's going to be one we have to pay for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I was going to say another direct impact. I think my mother was telling me a couple days ago how he's trying to start this, I don't know the word for it, but basically he's trying to cut off Social Security. Mm-hmm. So basically people who make under $100,000 a year, he would cut off, so when you get a paycheck, they automatically take off Social Security. So he's trying to take that off so that you get more money in your checks. But what happens is a lot of people who are not aware would automatically say, yeah, just take, like, let me get the money. But in the end, when you get your tax returns, you have to pay all that money back.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So a lot of people don't know. So when their jobs say, oh, do you want to sign up so you can get more money from your check, they'll automatically say yes. So in a sense, it's like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, because the rich already know to take that tax off, whereas the poor, because they need more money, they'll take it, not knowing that they got to pay all that money back.
It's not just about like the tax money, it's because when people start to retire, they won't get that money anymore. So that, like, as much as like he's trying to push it, it's not gonna really go. But the people who, it's also about, you know, I can't always like mix up the two. Like, is it Medicare or Medicaid? I always mix the two up. But like the one that you get when you have like Social Security, that one's gonna get cut off. You're not gonna have that anymore. Like if you have that, and then once you retire, you're not gonna. A lot of people don't have a pension. A lot of companies don't give you pensions. You have to take out a 401k on top of that. So it's taking away from money who actually, it's taking away from us in general, this generation that won't, if he does take away, it's gonna take away from us, not from like, kind of like the older generation, it'll take away from us.
Yeah, that's why it's so important if you can open up a retirement account now, do that now. It might feel really young, but at the end of the day, when we have to work until like we're 75 to pay off the $1 trillion in debt we're in country, you're gonna have something to at least sit on, you know, and have outside of your Social Security checks, which I hope we'll have in the future.
I think this is what I mean by giving people something positive to fight for. Because what we also have to realize is, like, take this issue of Social Security on these payroll taxes. It does not have to be this way. And they can pass legislation that fixes a lot of these issues. We spend what big ass chunk of our budget on military? What if they took a piece of that and put it back into Social Security? What if they raised the income cap on, because right now you pay into Social Security up to a certain, I'm gonna explain this really bad, but you pay into it up to a certain income. Like I think it's like $113,000 or something like that. And no, like per year.
Oh.
And like not you're putting $113,000 in, but up to $113,000 of your income gets taxed for Social Security at like a 6 or 7% rate or something like that. But after that $114,000, it's not getting taxed anymore. So we could raise that cap up to $250,000, $400,000. How much more money would that bring into the Social Security system, right? So there's ways to fix all of the biggest problems that we have now. But the problem is the way, and this I think contributes to people not voting, is like there's these parameters of political discussion that's like, you can say these things about Social Security, or you can say these things about Social Security on the right. But outside of like those two sort of walls that are being put up by both the parties in their limited conversation about this, there's this whole universe of solutions, right? And we don't have the chance to engage in any of that when we continuously have to vote out of fear, when we continuously are just responding to everything as if it's some big crisis and not like imagining better solutions for our problem. And I think that imagination piece is key. We have a political class, a leadership class that is afraid of doing big things from the right or from the left. You know, and what does that mean for us and all of the big problems that we face, right? So,
and I'll say to add to that, I think the biggest problem of a lot of people not voting is just not knowing. Like, I think a lot, like including myself, like I'm not gonna say I'm a political person because I'm not, but when it comes to like the millennials, we're not interested in like, you know, sitting there and watching like 2 hours of people talking about things that don't really affect us. So it's like, when it's time to vote, we already know it's like either our parents are telling who to vote for, or we're just voting because, okay, we hear that Trump is bad, so okay, let's vote for Biden. But we have no idea what Biden's political campaign is.
Right. That is so true. Like how many of you took a civics course in high school?
We didn't have that.
One out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us took a civics course. So like that speaks exactly to what you're talking about, the fact that like we don't even have the tools to even engage in those conversations. Like forget Social Security, like we don't even have like financial literacy to even engage in conversations about our own paycheck, what that looks like, how much money gets deducted a month or a week. We don't have the tools to engage in those conversations, so it's like so it's like based on household. How are you gonna vote? Like who's voting in my house? Who's voting for whom? Because we're not learning in school, even like we know the levels of government, but after that, you know, you meet a candidate for the first time. What do you ask? Oh, that's cool, that's great that you're running, and then they're like, vote for me, and then they walk away, and it's like, I didn't have the agency to be like, here's what I need from you. Here's what I need in my neighborhood. This is what I need in my block. This is what I need in my house. And we don't have those tools. We were never taught those tools.
Yeah.
Still, even today, like as an educator, we're still not teaching people those tools to have those conversations. So of course, voting feels super basic.
But as an educator, do you personally take the time out
Yes.
and do it on your own instead?
Yeah.
I know some people that's like that, where like they just take, you know, a little break section from the class, get a little real world topics in real quick and try to, you know, tell people what's really going on.
Yeah, and that takes courage for a teacher. I think like I was teaching English, and so I tried in whatever subject it was, or whatever text it was that we were learning, to incorporate the political realm. Just because I personally believe teaching is political. I wholeheartedly believe that teaching is political. If you choose to be apolitical, that is a choice. That is a political choice for you to be neutral. Do Black and Brown and Asian students deserve for you to take your time to be apolitical? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You need to make a choice. You either believe Black Lives Matter or you don't, and you need to step out of the classroom. Like that's it. It's really, really basic to me. It comes down to that fundamental level. You either do or you don't.
That's a perfect segue to our next topic, Black Lives Matter. I know you guys see the headlines, see what's happening. So the live murder of George Floyd. So how has that impacted everybody?
I ain't watching. I started getting tired of seeing the same stuff, so I just like anytime those videos come out, I just gotta skip through. I don't want to know what happened. I know what happened. They died. Police brutality. That's all I need to know. Because it just comes to a point now, it's just mentally deteriorating. That's really what it is now. I'm tired.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, but I would say more, it's strange to me, because it's like, you would think after Trayvon Martin or Eric Gardner, like you would think, okay, maybe police would, and I don't want to say it's just police, because I feel like outside of police, there's other killings that's happening. They're just not being broadcasted as much, but I would just think like as a Black man myself, one, I'm scared like of police in general now. It's very hard for me to like see a cop coming for safety in a sense, because now I view them as the enemy in a sense, but more so it didn't make sense to me how after, you know, the early killings like back in like the early 2010s, how this is still happening. I don't know, for me, if I was a police officer, I would think twice now to pull out my weapon before it happened. Just because I know, like, maybe I don't see it personally, but there could be somebody recording me. And I'm not saying like, oh, do actions based on recordings or not, because regardless of the camera or not, you should be doing your job. But in a sense, it's like, seeing that Black kids are afraid of me, I would be more lenient to certain things. Like for example, the recent shooting of James Blake. There's kids in the car. You know, like I don't know that. Like out of all the videos, that one was the most emotional to me, because I'm just like, it's not just about a Black man anymore. Like there's children watching you pull out your weapon for no reason. The man has his back turned to you and you shoot 7 times. What was the purpose of shooting 7 times? Like, what was the purpose of shooting once? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. For me as a Black man, it's just, and to me, it aggravates me when I see like police officers saying Blue Lives Matter. It turns me off, because I'm just like,
It's like a mockery.
yeah, like, why are you calling yourself a blue light? You're not police officers are not.
There's also like the argument of like, you're not born a blue light.
Yeah, you're not born an officer. Like, that's a job. We're talking about Black lives, as in like a human, like, our
Not to
skin
mention,
color.
like being a person that cuts down trees is more dangerous than being a police officer.
Right.
So, logger lives matter too.
Like to me, like I love the movement that, you know, we created, but I just feel like in a sense it's now becoming more of a joke, like Gabby was saying, how athletes are like saying it but then voting for the other side. It's just, I don't know, like I agree with the concept of Black Lives Matter because I do believe that Black Lives Matter, being a black man myself. But to me, I just feel like the way it's turning and the fact that police officers are still doing this, it's just becoming more scary knowing that. And I feel like they know that cameras are watching them and they're still doing the same actions. To me, now it's like, now you're not doing this out of like accidents or you're apologizing. I think you're doing this because you want to. So I don't know, to me it's just, it's become a little, not a little, it's become way more scarier to be a black man just to walk around the street. Like, just to even be pulled over in your car, it's like your heart beats so fast now. Like, I don't know, it's scary.
It's crazy because like I was at one of the marches one of the marches after the Floyd shooting, and it's so crazy because they were shouting names like, say his name, George Floyd, and there was names that they was saying off, and I was like, yo, I forgot about this person. I forgot. I was like, yo, there was this many. And it's just wild to think about. Like, this is something that. Like, it's something that, I don't want to say it's not going, but it's not going to stop. Police officers are clearly, this is something that, I'm not going to say this is their agenda, but something that's going to keep, it's something that's going to keep happening, you know what I'm saying? We always, so we start with Trayvon, we go back, I'm from Queens, so my mind is always shown better. You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm African, and then I go back to Amadou Diallo. I mean, this is something that's been going on forever and ever, and there's no way it's going to stop, you know what I'm saying? Everybody's come to this world with a clean slate, and the hate builds up, and the hate is something that they always gonna have hate for us, no matter what it is. What it shows me, it's not even a sense of fear of officers, of white people, of the majority being the minority. It's just how you move, really. Like, this is me personally, I can't speak on nobody else, it's how you move. I'm not gonna allow myself to be in a situation, whether it be good or bad, and let, like, the reputation that officers have scare me. Like, I'm a man of God, you feel me? The only person I fear is God. I mean, the only how you be is God. So you do what you gotta do if you feel you gotta do this, but I'm not gonna let you instill that fear in me like you trying to do the rest of my people. And if that could start with me or whoever, we gotta be strong, you know what I'm saying? We saw what happened with King and X and them stood up to these people, to their oppressors and whatnot, how that change was made. So now it's our time to do the same thing, step in those shoes and do what we gotta do, so.
So I'm taking African American literature right now, and something that we were reading, one of the snippets that we had was about how whiteness is a cash value, and how do you feel about that? Whiteness, it's like you put everything literally is politics. Like, you put a value on everything, and you put a value on black people as soon as they came to America, and it was just like they humanized them as soon as they even seen them. They seen them, and they were like, well, they're comfortable in their own skin. Well, we don't like that because we fear ourselves. So now we're gonna take them from their homes and we're gonna take them and use them, and that's exactly what they did. So how do you feel that whiteness is a cash value? Like, you can buy, like how you said politics, how you said athletes, right? It was athletes, right? That athletes are still, they're gonna say this.
Oh yes.
Yes, like how do you, like, that's exactly what that is. Like, they're buying their whiteness. Quotation mark, like, that's because it's a cash value. So they're still gonna vote for the opposite person, even though they're gonna show you that that's not who it is.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's so important to say out loud. Like, whiteness is this sense of righteousness. And it's so interesting too, because like right now, when we go back, let's go back to the presidents. The Democrats are trying to win over Democratic moderates who are white, because that's the biggest capital. And that's really pathetic to me because we're the biggest capital. Out of all the people of color, black women turn out and vote. They're the largest population. That should be your capital. That should be where your money's at. And we're literally like wasting time on this like cash for like whiteness. And we've always believed that. And that's like, to me, that's rooted in anti-blackness forever.
Yeah. Blew my mind with that.
It did, like that, for real.
But yeah, I definitely think a lot of this is straying a little bit away from that, but still on the topic a little. I think it is very economic, right? Both in how black people were turned into commodities when they got to these shores, and also now, like which communities and which economic class of black people are most likely to have these super frequent interactions with police that lead to more of these instances of police violence, right? Eric Garner got choked out for cigarettes. You know what I mean? Like these are petty crimes that they usually go into enforce. I think, who was the guy that got shot with the kids in the car? I can't remember.
Jacob Blake.
Jacob Blake, he was breaking up like a fight or
Right.
something like that between, these are little petty offenses that we have, these police forces that act as occupying armies. They don't act like, stewards of the community. They see poor black communities as places where we have to manage this underclass of undesirables, really. And so it is really fucked up. But also, when we talk about like commodification of things, right? I feel like it's important to bring up what's happening with Breonna Taylor, because I feel like someone's gonna trademark free justice for Breonna Taylor. There was like a BreonnaCon convention where people were selling like natural soaps and you know what I mean? So that is, I think, a downside of this Black Lives Matter movement being so internet centric, is that it is a little watered down. There is no organized like national Black Lives Matter group that then is giving direction to all of the different chapters on the ground. These organizations exist. Do they have the reach, and do they have the influence, and do they have the control and the grip over the movement and what flares up in a given city after? No, they don't. And that's not a knock on it, because decentralized challenging of power, I think, is necessary and a part of it too. But I definitely think about how a lot of what we're experiencing now is very much the same struggles that we've been fighting for forever. Rodney King. If you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, he talks about police violence in the way that we're talking about it today, and that's in the 60s, 50s. So we definitely are fighting the same struggles, but they're completely different and on completely different landscapes, because we have things like the internet now. We have like the ability to turn a person's death into a hashtag that lives and takes on a life on its own outside of what's happening with that family, with that case, with that city. You know what I mean? So I don't know what this means. I don't know if it's better or worse that way.
Yeah.
But it is something that I definitely observe, and it does make me a little uncomfortable to like constantly watch the videos and then hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag dead person's name. I just feel it's a little inhuman to me.
I agree.
And I also think like the way that, when these shootings happens and there's a really juicy video that makes it on the front pages everywhere, on your feed it's like autoplay.
Yes.
Right? You can't even not see it if you don't want to, because you scroll and it's playing and you try to get past it and it's there again. And news outlets do it, people share it, and it's fine. We got to let people know what's happening. There are unfortunately a lot of people in our society that need to see black people's bodies being mangled to believe what we're saying about how this society steps on us. So I get the place for that, but none of it makes me feel good. I never watch these videos. And I just think about like when ISIS first popped up, for example, and they were beheading these journalists, and it was fucking crazy. And there was like a good 2 weeks where those ISIS videos were being like shared and autoplayed, and Facebook shut that shit down. The media companies shut that down. They were not playing ISIS videos on autoplay when you click onto their website. For some reason, when it's people that look like us, that's completely fine.
Yeah, they're continuing to play.
Right, you can see it.
On Instagram though, what they started to do was sensitive content.
Yeah.
I do like a gray screen first, and you gotta go ahead and click that first.
Right.
But it's like, it's not for every account. Sometimes the videos just skip through. Yeah, so like sometimes you'll see it, like if it's posted on somebody's story, it'll say sensitive content. If it's on the timeline, for some of them, it's definitely gonna say it. For others, they just pop up, you just see it. So it really depends on, I guess, I don't know if it's the person's account or if Instagram catches it first or how long it's been up, but it's kind of iffy.
I get the memo for that. I'm I'm confused. Like,
My followers didn't get
Yeah, I'm confused.
Yeah, no, I see it still on Twitter too, sometimes it's all over the place. But I guess to wrap that point up, I think we're fighting so many different battles, and it is even a psychological battle.
And it's not even time to grieve either.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's not like, you know, before somebody passes and then there's time, everybody kind of gets together, knows what's going on, gets informed. This one's like day after day, week after week, month after month, and it's like, damn, like the list of names is just so long, you just can't stop.
Come numb to it.
Yeah, it's like after a while, it's like you don't want to know anymore. It's just like it doesn't affect you anymore just because you've seen it so much, but that's an effect in itself. Yeah.
I think to like Josh's point when it comes to truth making, like I feel like when I went to the march on Washington like a couple of weeks ago, I feel like that was the first time I felt like as a collective we were strategized, because the amount of grassroots organizations that share the same goal, like in New York City and all these different states, it's at this point it's becoming pointless. Like I understand the motive behind protesting and being angry, but what is that protesting doing? Like what is coming after that protesting? We need to actually create an action plan. And what I liked about the commitment march on Washington was that there was a purpose behind it. They wanted more people to be informed about the John Lewis Voting Act, and then the George Floyd, I don't remember what it was specifically for. I think it was the get your knees off our neck something, but stuff like that has a purpose. And I think the reason why the civil rights movement had more of an impact is because they were more supportive of one another. They were a collective, and I think that's desperately what we need in this time more so than ever. So I know people have said we've been trying for years to like unify all these grassroots organizations, but that's just what we need. And I don't know if Reverend Al Sharpton is the person to take us there, but given his controversy.
That's where you get them perms. Laid, okay?
Yes.
Like everything else.
Oh my gosh. That's so crazy, but we need somebody. We need that face to take us there.
I do actually. Sorry.
Okay.
I feel like we can't talk about police brutality without at least discussing the ways that police are completely protected in these actions, and their training orients them towards like seeing every possible thing as a threat to be neutralized. And then the whole legal system is set up to protect them, and it even starts with the unions, but even deeper than that, there are Supreme Court cases that's like, basically, if a police officer perceives that someone could be a threat to the public, they have the right to act. Whatever that means and whatever that looks like. If a police officer believes that there's a possible threat to them, they have the right to act in the name of public safety. And we really have to do away with things like that, and we also have to put real like accountability measures so that people feel like they're gonna lose their livelihood in their job if they don't do their job correctly. Right now that just doesn't exist. There's like everything in place to protect murderous cops, and I'm not even gonna go down that it's not all cops route, because it doesn't matter whether it's all cops or not if they're all protected by a system that lets them murder with impunity, right? So
yeah, and that's why, I mean, right now, what has been the biggest wave here in New York City is the defund the NYPD by at least $1 billion. NYPD in the New York City budget gets about $5.6 to $6 billion from the New York City budget. And so what we've been calling for is to defund or disinvest $1 billion and place it in social services. And so that's why this last fiscal year 2021 budget was a huge controversy, because a lot of people on the progressive left wanted elected officials to vote no against the budget. But that didn't happen. It was passed. And what the mayor did, or tried to convince people of, is that, yeah, we defunded the NYPD by at least $1 billion, like $880 billion or whatever it was. really was a manipulation of the budget, and it's like a pretend defund.
Then he moved,
and he
like,
moved
the
some
school
funds
safety
somewhere else.
into the DOE
Yes,
and,
right.
yeah,
You know, the youth got
yeah.
back SYEP, which was really important. But at the end of the day, you know, we spend millions of dollars renovating locker rooms for law enforcement. $15 billion. You know where that money could have went? Schools. Renovating our school locker rooms. Renovating the ventilation, right? Look at how many ventilation issues we're having with reopening schools. So like that's a big conversation right now in New York City, is like making sure that we're doing everything we can to dismantle the monetary power of unions and law enforcement. So also like there's another one where it's like if you're running for office, you need to pledge not to take any police union money because then they own you, right? If I donate $1,000 to your campaign, you owe me something later as a union, especially a police union. So it's like about not having your hands tied, and then it's also about demanding that your elected officials say no to the way we spend money in our city. But we need to have that, again, like we need to have those tools to be like, are you X and X person not gonna do X, Y, and Z when it comes to voting for our budget? Are you gonna allocate, are you gonna fully fund our schools? Are you gonna make sure that we have homeless services, money for our homeless services, youth services? Like those are the questions, those are the tools that we need to give people. So that when we meet candidates or even people who are already in office, you're asking them those questions.
So that was heavy. Kind of gonna end with something light, guys.
That was heavy? What?
No, just like how Black Lives Matter is making everybody feel, you know. And I don't want people to feel too sad, even though we should be aware. So we're gonna talk about Black Lives Matter and the music and entertainment industry. So I'm gonna start with you, Loco, because you know, Mr. Big Time Rob out here.
I do what I do.
So, you see like certain entertainers, certain athletes are wearing, like protesting their games, I believe. I'm not really into sports. They're protesting their games. I don't know if y'all want to chime in, like doing.
They got like Black Lives Matter on the jacket there, you know.
Yeah.
Like, and some of them just refuse to play. Also because of COVID too, but yeah.
Do you feel like that's actually making an impact? And are they utilizing their podium in the right way? Platform.
I wouldn't say they're not doing it in the right way, but I think, yeah, like you said, the great question, is it impacting anything? You know, me personally, just because I'm so invested in sports and whatnot, I don't really see, and maybe I'm just ignorant to it, I don't know. I don't see, you know, what difference it's truly making. You know, now when you have these players going out there speaking up and doing 100%, that's where it's at. You know, you got the name on the back of the jersey. That's cool. If you're not having 30 for me when I need you to have 30 for me, I don't care what's on the back of your jersey. Like, you know what I'm saying? But if you're going to put your money where your mouth is and really speak out when it's time, I'm with you. You know, just last week, 2 weeks ago, the Bucks chose not to play. To me personally, I didn't really see, okay, you guys didn't play. I'm going to just change the channel, you know, what's next. I'm going to be mad at, you know, what's going on, of course, with Jacob Blake, because that's the real issue there, but you not playing doesn't really affect me. This is something way bigger. This is a man who could have lost his life. You said now, yeah, of course, that's solidarity. You all feel like that's how y'all showing it, but to me, it's not really moving me. I think for more so when it comes to entertainers and athletes, it's just what you're going to do to really show that you're on the front lines. You know what I'm saying? Shutting us out or whatever, stopping the music, that's cool. Take it a step further and really do something that's going to affect the community. Like me, like I said, I'm 22. Yeah, I could do big major things. You know, I just don't know really where to put my feet at. I've been making lit turn-up music for like 4 or 5 years. I said, you know what, let me actually speak to the plight of what's going on. I made a song, not a trend about the Black Lives Matter going on. And people love me for it, like, yo, this is what we want to hear from you. I'm like, oh, snap, I didn't know. You know what I mean? So just something you can do to actually show you on the front lines and doing something just makes that difference.
Congrats on your song.
Thank you.
Love here. Get that in.
I got you.
We're gonna start calling each other.
Absolutely.
I think one thing that I do like about this Black Lives Matter movement is that more people are starting to lean towards black business now, as far as like supporting each other and like actually going out their way to find black businesses. So I feel like it's a slow start, but it's a start in and itself, and it's definitely it's coming up. Like people, like their businesses are starting to boom. A lot of people are starting their own businesses and actually, moving forward with it and getting the support that they actually need and want. So I feel like there's a new wave of like economic power that we may not see, but it's starting to like grow up in the community.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say in terms of the sports, I would agree with Loco. Like, I was watching basketball like when it came back after COVID, and them not playing, it was just like, okay, like yeah, I'm gonna miss the games, but like, what was it, like 2-3 days later they came back, started playing again. So it was just like, all right, like it didn't change anything. I understood why they did it, and I get like there are some players that's on the floor like, for example, I think there was a game that was happening. It was like OKC versus Houston or something. And they were asking, after the game, one of the athletes, Chris Paul, he was asking him about like his playing stuff, and he was like, yo, before you ask me anything, like justice for Breonna Taylor. Like, and it caught me off guard because I was like, okay, like I understand that, but in a sense, it just didn't do anything for me. Because I'm like, you playing basketball, I'm simply here to watch basketball. And I understand, like, I get they're trying to spread awareness, but at the end of the day, like, I could literally just change the channel if I wanted to. Like, and I feel like that's what a lot of people do. Like, a lot of people that don't want to hear that message, like, they'll just turn the channel. And so, and mind you, like, when they ask them that question, the game's already over. So it's like, I could literally just end the game. I don't have to hear you talk. So,
Most people aren't waiting for the post interview.
right, they're not waiting for the post interview. So it's like, we just came here to watch the game. As soon as the game's over, all right, that's it. As far as the music industry goes, I do appreciate a lot of artists that are making music for, you know, Black Lives Matter, including artists like Wale, Big Sean.
Lil Baby did something too.
Lil Baby did something too. Like, I do appreciate them because, you know, a lot of people do listen to their music, so when they hear that, it's like, okay, now they're more aware. But as far as what Loco said, like, I do agree, they do need to take it a step further, like, you know, and some of them do, like, they actually go to the marches, they actually, you know.
They should learn from Meek Mill. Meek Mill came out of jail. He started with Jay-Z and Robert Kraft, which but they started this Reform Alliance. It's an organization devoted to prison reform. You know, and I do think that I'm happy to see a lot of people with power embracing the fact that they at least have control over a lot of symbols that people could watch. And they're trying to use that for good. So I do think it's a step in the right direction. I agree with all of y'all in that it really doesn't do anything. I mean, right now in this super symbolic form as far as like material change, but we do live in a highly like entertainment focused society, and those symbols do matter, being on the right side of things.
Right.
You know, I think it generally, I'm not put off by it, you know what I mean? But I do think the more powerful thing is using all of that capital that you have available to you, all of that money in your bank account, to really find a way to make some kind of material change to, you know, do something, even if you're not able to change all the laws in the system. You as a 100-millionaire person, LeBron James, has a lot more power to get people out of jail than I do. You know, and if you spend the rest of your life like, what's her name, Kim Kardashian is doing now, like whatever. You know, and no one cared about Kim, but look, Kim was a part of getting a couple of people freed, and you know, I'm here for it. Use that power and those resources.
Some discretion.
That there is, of course. She's in law school right now.
Yeah. I think I'm really curious to hear everyone's opinion around the idea, and I saw this, I think today, there was a football team, I don't know what the name.
They just started the season yesterday.
Yeah, that like kneeled or just stopped for a moment during, I think, the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm not sure. But anyway, at the end of the day, what I noticed is like, again, to go back to like Whiteness as this like capital, is you have majority Black players playing for white people who own the capital of football leagues and basketball leagues and baseball and all of it. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, because like, yeah, you know, I didn't pay attention to basketball until the other day when we saw that they weren't playing the game anymore because that was their form of protesting. But at the end of the day, they ended up going back on the court. At the end of the day, basketball commenced. Football has started, you know? And it's because when you look at the people who own the leagues, they don't look like the people who play. And so you have Whiteness owning Black people again in this way for entertainment. that I find to be really interesting, and like I don't hear those conversations enough. Like we have the conversation that's on a shallow level about, oh great, you know, we're wearing the names on important people's names on jerseys. We have the Black Lives Matter murals. We have players who are stepping out, or an entire team that are stepping out. But then they could only do it for so far because capital is not theirs.
Right, capital
got
exiled.
Right.
Like for, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And yet that wasn't the right way. You know, people were like, oh, you don't do it like that. You don't ask for what you want like that. Because white people own how we need to protest.
Yeah.
So I find that, I don't know if you've ever heard those conversations, or what are your thoughts on that? Like, what needs to actually change in the music industry or in the sports industry to really own that capital, to really own that power?
Yeah,
it falls on, I would say it falls on the athletes, because I like, if I was in their position, I would understand too. Like, at the end of the day, they still have families to feed. And so, you know, if they don't play, they don't get paid. You know?
But why does it have to be that ultimatum, right? Like, aren't you tired of that ultimatum?
Yeah. I think in sports it's a lot harder, or music too, because at the end of the day, these big labels are the ones that have to pay you. A lot of times you take the independent route to try to build your own thing. It's not gonna work every time. Like, you know, everybody can't be Jay and Master P.
Right.
So it's kind of difficult. You take someone 19 years old, you can't tell them, hey, create your own label, sign your homies, look for talent over it. You can't really do that. So at the end of the day, I kind of need you to put this money in my pocket. And as long as I need you, and you know that I need you, you're always gonna win. So it's a matter of finding a way to create for yourself, for your people, at like just a large and like a super massive scale. But at the end of the day, it's still a difficult thing to do. When you got like in the $1 billion industry ran by white people.
Right, you were 20 years behind playing catch up now too.
Right.
Exactly. Right. We just got let into sports in what, the 50s and 60s.
Yes.
Our parents were alive when, you know, this was starting. But I think what you're talking about is like, who's really pulling the levers? Who's really pulling the strings? You know, in the background. And I mean, yeah, it definitely, I think the most egregious example in sports is like the NCAA, where these coaches are making millions of dollars. These students are in video games, like, and most of them are black people or students of color, and they get nothing, and most of them are not making it into the league, and they spent the last 4 years or so, you know, focused mostly on this one thing and not their education or their career after. You know, so it is really egregious and exploitative. And I also think about the fact that, you know, we know the really big money makers in every sports field, the people that have the multi-million-dollar contracts that last for 10 years. Most people are on $1 million, $2 million contracts that they're getting over the course of a couple of years, which, you know, amounts to a middle-class salary. You know what I mean? And in some ways, like, the really lucrative, the really successful sports figures are in our faces so much that we have this perception that that's everyone in the world of sports. And that's really not. That's really not the case at all. So, I mean, it is really exploitative. And I do think it does take a lot of like for example, what Jay did in the music industry. He started off as a dude from the streets, and now he's like a kingmaker in the entire industry. And, you know, it takes people getting successful and staying involved and being really committed to putting their people on as well. So, you know, I don't know if Michael Jordan owns any basketball teams, but maybe he could get a couple.
Yeah, he's partnering with the owners.
Right. So, you know, what are the really successful people doing to try to break into that sort of ownership, leadership, controlship, for lack of a better word, class? You know, I think it's a real thing. And I just wanted to speak on artists or musicians really quickly, because I think black music has, in some ways, has its roots in like talking about what's going on, whether it's expressing the pain, like the pain that came through when you were just listening to like jazz and blues, right? And that's people reacting to the Jim Crow world that they lived in. Hip hop has its roots in like a very fight the power, challenge the system kind of thing. It's extremely mainstream, but it's in a lot of ways still very countercultural, right? You know, so I do think musicians, when they embrace that, it's an amazing thing. It's a beautiful thing, and it's powerful, you know, because we could sit here and try to, you know, make people watch educational videos, but we know everyone's not going to go to college. Everyone's not going to sit down and listen to a lecture or watch a documentary, but they are tuning into what this person, this artist that they admire is saying and doing. So if you're embracing that power that you have and using it, you know, in a deliberate way, that's powerful. I just encourage more people to do that, you know.
So, thank you all for contributing to this conversation. I really appreciate hearing and learning from you all. It's interesting to hear what everybody has to say, like their backgrounds, their experience. You know, thank you to Shamar and Serena for allowing me to co-host this episode.
Easiest one, Instagram, 6'5", so it'd be like all letters after the 6 foot _5 _, you know.
You can follow my campaign at Felicia Singh 2021 or go to felicia2021.com.
Follow the campaign.
You can find me on Twitter at Josh Serrano _ my short first name and last name. And on Instagram at Magnificent1.
What is my Twitter?
Oh, I look for his Twitter. Y'all know me, man. Local Warbucks, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Apple Music, Spotify. Anyway, you can just Google somebody. Just Google me.
Hey, thanks for having me co-host on today's show. You can follow me on Twitter at The Gabby Show. That show without a W at the end. And on Instagram at GA.Bree, 3 E's, L.
And y'all can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at _WeWantMore. And make sure to follow our show's page on Instagram and Twitter, guys. It's TNTK Show.
As always, thank you for watching the show.
And that's all you need to know.